The Indie Council is in session. Welcome. This is the place for the leading voices from across the industry to gather and talk news, titles, and everything indie. I'm your Master of Ceremonies, Jen Garcia, and joining me for today's council is Serving the Pigeon, Mike Towndrow.
I thought you were going to say Jill Groat still.
I know. I actually heard Jill Groat in my head. I
Yeah,
was like,
same.
Why?
Maybe she's serving the pigeon. I don't know. You got also the worst intro of the two intros here. You got the
No,
the
it makes
nastier.
sense.
I would love to serve pigeon. Come on, I'm serving
You
pigeon
serve
on the
it
daily, my dude.
fancy?
Come on.
Fuck.
Pinky's
And
up
it-
with the Celsius.
And we got preparing for dessert. The voice you just heard, Jill Groat.
Yep, I'm ready.
It's a plot twist.
Yup.
You may have thought, oh my god, I never thought I'd hear Jill and not in the ceremonious ceremony chair.
I'm
But
in the-
you're
I'm
kind
out
of
of the position. My voice is
Yeah.
not being great for me today. So Janet is doing the thing.
Are you preparing dessert for tomorrow?
I'm preparing for a very long. Well, first of all, anyone who knows me knows that if I prepared anything, you shouldn't eat it. Second of all, I have prepared in that I have purchased chocolate and cakes for people.
Nice.
Now,
So
where from?
C's Candy for the chocolate, and then just Safeway for the cake. It's fine.
Honestly, grocery store cakes, pastries, whatever you make. Oh, dude, on another level, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're
I'll-
doing back there, but they're
Right?
killing it.
I'll take a ShopRite cake over like a fresh, like dope ass New York City bakery any day of the week. You know,
I think that's false.
No,
I think
that's-
I would
no,
go
that's
for
correct.
the bakery.
I've been on record to say I'd take a Chips Ahoy cookie over my mom's fresh baked cookies. Like,
Wow.
My husband makes really good cookies, though. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't know if there
Turns out your husband and Mike's mom, not the same person, you know? You heard it here first. Dispelling the rumors. Yeah, I think grocery store cake definitely can hang a lot better than one might suspect. Yeah, for us, we're also just doing a buy our way out of Thanksgiving. We're just buying some food. We're gonna cook some sides because we're doing it really, really small this year. It's just 3 of us, and I'm like, I don't want to make a turkey for 3 people and then eat the
You don't
turkey
need
for
to.
4 days and then throw it away because it's like, is it bad? Is it not bad? You don't want to risk it. Then
It's
I kind
never
of feel bad.
Do you not
You know,
do the
somebody's
blessing
like,
thing
you
where
can-
blessing, like, he makes that like his Thanksgiving is apparently like a meal for like 3 weeks somehow.
No, I do that.
What?
Yeah, usually.
Maybe not 3 weeks, but I
No,
remember
I-
last year
It's
he was
like-
talking about it for like a week and a half that he
Yeah,
just kept
that's all
eating
you eat.
Thanksgiving.
You change it up by putting it in bread and putting it in soup and putting it in noodles.
Also, blessing is mad, man.
I'm-
We all know that. But
I'm cool with that game, but I cannot do that for more than, I would say by day 4, it's over. Like we're not, because the next
We're
day
done
you
with
basically
this.
just eat the meal again.
Yeah.
The day after that, maybe also the meal again. The day after that, maybe you try to like kind of mash it with something else because maybe you're running out of some of the stuff.
the day after
the day
that,
after
you're
that,
you're writing red rum on
how-
the door.
Exactly, exactly. Like,
Okay, but
how
here's
old
my
can this get?
my problem.
No thanks.
Y'all both have been to PAX West, and there is
Mhm.
a dim sum place right next to the convention center. That dim sum place has opened a branch very close to me,
Mm.
and I am so tempted to just order a bunch of dim sum tomorrow.
Listen, there's
Right.
no
Yeah.
rules. You don't
Why
have to.
not?
You don't have to
There's no
succumb to
rules.
society's rules about the
Like-
turkeys. You know.
We do a grills giving usually, so
Oh,
like
fun.
all of our
Okay.
grill and meat is ready to go, and I don't want to like take that away from
Right.
from the grilling master, but I kind of just want to dig into some pork buns, you know.
And you can. You're an adult.
Are you just doing grilled food, or do you like grill the turkey?
We grill all the food, every food that we will eat that day, even like vegetables. Some we did last year. We did eggs on the grill. Like it all goes on the grill.
Nice.
We're seeing Wicked in
Did
the
I-
morning
you-
at 10 o'clock in the morning. So my breakfast is gonna be Alamo Draft House popcorn. Very excited.
I love
Very
a
good, very
morning
good.
movie. Back in the day, you could really get a savings on that. Now, not so much. I don't even know if you save on that anymore.
No,
I have my
not
Alamo
really.
season pass, so there's 2
Nice.
tickets.
There you go.
I always
what
wake
does
up
it
early.
say?
I'm not a morning person, but I always wake up early for the parade because it's worth it.
Mm.
As a jaded New Yorker, I don't give a shit anymore about the parades.
It's you got to throw something on the TV. It's that
The
it's
dog show.
maybe some sports.
The dog show,
Killer.
all in.
You can't skip that.
No.
Is there a Thanksgiving dog show?
Oh yeah, right after the parade.
Yeah. How are you missing out,
Is there
Janet?
a theme? to the like?
No,
the
It's
dog
just it's
checking
just a
out?
dog
it's a
show.
dog show. The
It is
And
a
National
dog
the
show?
dude from
Breeder dog show or
Seinfeld
whatever
is
it is.
commentary on it. It's great.
It's always great.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Jenna,
You
Uh,
go
watch
in
well,
there
Jenna, watch the
one
dog show
day a
tomorrow.
year. One day a year, you just become an expert on freaking
Yeah.
dogs. You're
I
like,
guess
no, that
I'll.
one's gait
Hey,
doesn't look smooth.
I will
know?
throw it to my family. It's a group decision. I don't know if we're just gonna do
Okay.
background sports. A lot of times
Isaiah,
we
we
do like
know
a
you're
bad.
listening.
We do like
Make
a
the right
bad movie
decision.
sometimes.
That's good,
Though it's
yeah.
more when we're cooking. Like we'll do like a good bad movie. Like that's when I watched Face Off for the first time
Oh,
on a
good.
Thanksgiving
yeah.
when we were cooking. You know, it's like
a good
you
thing.
take
While
your
you're
Face Off and
cooking
you swap it with someone else.
is a choice for that one.
Yeah. You know, because I feel like Thanksgiving cooking, it's all cutting, and then you're just waiting for the most part. It's like
That's a lot of
it's not
cooking.
too
I mean-
elaborate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the waiting's like way longer.
Sure.
Like I hate
It's
the
like
waiting part.
it's like
Not a fan.
days. But you know, as you're waiting, maybe y'all are throwing this this podcast on and hearing about some indie news. So let's get into it. We got the 15th annual Devolver Delayed Awards of 2024, which thank God Jill wrote up this little piece here that I'm going to read the first graph, and then frankly probably toss it to Jill because Devolver is a joke within a joke within a
Yep.
joke, and I'm like,
You gotta keep
hey,
up.
I'm lost. I got lost in the Devolver sauce, but the article reads as follows. Well, here we go again. This is actually exactly how I feel. Publisher Devolver Digital has announced a second showcase set to feature games in its lineup which have been delayed out of the year. Leaning into the spirit of the award season, Devolver has also decided to name 2024's event the 15th annual Devolver Delayed Awards 2024. This, of course, being cheeky, you know, they kind of make back making up the lore, right? But
Yep.
Jill, I started glancing at this right before, you know, we record this show, and I'm like, wait, what is going
What's
on? 'Cause at first I
happening?
thought, is it just the, you know, I'm like, oh, they're just gonna show off the delayed games, but then they also have like all these other like fake categories. Like, what are we looking at here when we watch this? Oh, and also, is this it? Is this the trailer? Like, what
It's
is
li-
happening
This
with this
this is-
Devolver
this
delay?
was the
Janet, it was a
announcement, but
5-minute
also the
video.
awards. It's literally
Yeah.
5 minutes and 37 seconds long, so you can watch it as you're listening to this, I imagine. But the idea is that, which I love. I love this. Devolver is announcing. It seems like it's getting ready to announce every year that this will be an annual thing. Games that are being pushed from 2024 into 2025. And to be cheeky about it, which Devolver Digital always is, they are not only doing a big showcase celebration, which they did last year, but this year was award season themed. So every category winner was a game being delayed into 2025. So
And 3 of
they
the
had-
nominees were fake.
yeah, there was only one. Yeah, there were 4 nominees per category. 3 of the nominees were fake, so you knew the one that won was going to be a real game that's actually getting pushed. And so it was just like they announced it, and all of the developers actually came on and did like a speech as well, like thanking people and being confused. The
Except
last
poor Sam, who like I follow him on socials and stuff. I really enjoy his skate videos. Like the poor
Mhm.
dude actually broke his arm skating somewhat recently, and yeah,
you gotta suffer for your art sometimes.
suffer for the art.
You know, you gotta do it. So the winners, quote unquote, of this award ceremony include Stick It to the Stickman,
Which I
Skate
thought was
Story.
out, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I looked this up when they announced that they were doing this yesterday. And I'm like, here's the roster of announced games that were supposed to be out. They pretty much corresponded. We only really had 3 games that were getting pushed into 2025, and I don't think they're going to make huge waves. But it's Stick It to Stickman, Skate Story, and Baby Steps. I don't think any of us are surprised by any of this. We haven't heard a lot of the any news from these really for this year. I love rewind. Delays are going to happen. Delays are a part of this of the scene of making games, of developing games, especially in the indie scene. I mean, I say especially, but like it's happening in AAA as well. But I love that there is space for not just allowing delays to happen, but also kind of making them into a celebratory, fun kind of vibe instead of like obviously if you were really excited for Skate Story, which I know you are, Mike, um, it's disappointing that it's not coming and you're not going to get your hands on it this year. But like, I think a lot of people in this space, and I would encourage a lot of people in this space, um, are happy that developers are not killing themselves to get things out, are getting close to their vision as possible. So anytime I see a delay, especially in the indie space, there's a lot of like, hey, you do whatever you have to do. We're excited to play it. So to see that Devolver Digital again, really good at taking like the kind of zeitgeist feelings and turning them up to 11. So they've taken that kind of idea and just made it into the most ridiculous awards ceremony. And I'm excited for this to continue to be a thing. Not because I'm excited for delays, but because there are always delays in any year. And I kind of hope that it becomes a larger thing, that people start treating their delays this way in a celebratory, uh, like fun. If we have to have bad news, we might as well have a silly 5-minute video about what's going on. And then of course also in the middle of all of this, they do highlight the games that came out this year that you should be excited about. I was kind of hoping they were going to touch on some games that are in the future, maybe 2025, maybe beyond, but they didn't this year. They did last year. But there are a lot of cool things coming out of Devolver, and I always appreciate every event they do. Whatever event they do is always memorable at the very least.
I
Yeah.
sorry, God.
I was just gonna say that this took me like forever to get the spelling right. They have it labeled as in mercatus, which wait, actually, Jill,
Yes.
didn't you take Latin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
think that's a
this was
fake.
out there.
I think this is a fake word. Is it?
I
Have
don't
you looked
know.
it up?
I did look it up, and it says that it's a Latin word for market,
Oh,
like
that
in
makes
market.
sense.
I guess what
In the
they're trying to
market
say.
is hilarious.
Yeah, but that took me a bit. I think this one had, for me, a little. The pageantry was a bit much for this, but I do
No, it's
think
perfect.
once the format gets down, like, because I gotta be real, I'm like, I just kind of want to. I liked what they had before because it was so quick hit. I feel like this was. I get there like, oh yeah, it's like a 5-minute video. It's a quick thing to watch, but I'm like, I do spend a little bit more time double checking some of the game names, in part because I don't remember some of these as much. So this one wasn't. I don't know. It's fine. I do think also though, to your point, Jill, like this is Devolver doing Devolver's thing. Like they are the cheeky, publisher. They have like a really specific style. Even though we've talked about they publish a wide range of game types, but they do have like that association with almost like a grungier, goofier angle. Like you think more Cult of the Lamb than Plucky Squire when you think Devolver, even though they're both Devolver games. And I think they do a good job committing to that bit in a way that not a lot of publishers can establish a feeling. Like you get a feeling from Devolver, and I think that is definitely a strength that they have. But Mike, you were going to say something.
I was gonna say I think it's also very smart that this coincidentally dropped the day of the Steam sale going live. So like they typically put their entire catalog on sale. So I think it's a very smart play to just kind of tie it to the Steam event each year. And what else I was gonna say? I kind of hope in the background that Volvi game is actually being developed similar to Devolverland. Like I wonder if like Doing Soft or Free Lives is working on that. Grant, maybe not Free Lives. Free Lives. I don't understand how like the output that these folks have. Like just to go over their catalog: Angerfoot, Broforce, Cricket Through the Ages, General Jousting, Gorn, Stick It to the Stickman, Terra Nil, and that was all within the past, I think, 10 years. But even that, like once they signed with Devolver, it was like 2 games a year, which is fucking wild. Yeah, but I it's my kind of humor. I love the stupid B-roll of like the stock footage audience, the pomp and circumstance. I think it's so good. And yeah, some of the fake game names, they get to me, and I can't wait for in about a month we're gonna get the holiday special as well. I can't wait. That's always a good time too with little Satan and his little devil mask. Yeah.
No, seriously, the Devolver game that won the last category is fake, but I do hope it's a fake, like, but it becomes real because so many people want it. But also, there was like a minute game in there that was like a colorful minute game, which
Yes,
is fake, just to be very clear. But I was
Kylie,
like,
when
I
me and Kyle
absolutely
watched
want
it,
that.
we're like, oh my god, I hope download color is real.
I want it so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some cute ones in there. They had Gato Roboto Rainbow Edition as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was just, we'll see what happens with Volvy's Adventure DX. I feel like that could be a real thing at some point, but we'll have to stay tuned. And that brings us to topic of the show. We're gonna be talking about indie game canon and our first indies. This is a conversation that we had kind of thrown around a few episodes ago about, what is the indie canon, and by canon we mean, if you think of it, I think literature is kind of the first thing that comes to mind for that, which is sort of the staples of the medium type, or a genre type. So I think for literature, a lot of people think of kind of like the high school literary canon. That's why all of us read kind of The Great Gatsby, or Fahrenheit 451, or a couple. There's like a some Shakespeare. Like maybe it wasn't
Yep.
Romeo and Juliet, but you probably had some Shakespeare thrown in there. And obviously part of that is also a bit of standardization, but there's also like all the stuff that goes into curriculum that kind of makes, hey, this is a baseline of the combo of basic, but also kind of a banger. I think a lot of those books speak to a lot of traditional structures and like storytelling, and they're of quality, but they're also kind of, oh yeah, we all sort of read this, or they're almost cliche in a sense. So think about what that is for us in the indie scene, but also talking about what our entry point was. So Jill, I want to start with you. What was your kind of entry point into things, and like what do you kind of consider for this indie canon?
My entry into indie games, I've talked about this before because it's weird because I am such a like go indie games person. Um, I didn't get into indie games until much later into my adult life. I think a lot of that has to do with growing up as the kind of odd man out. Um, I had to I felt like I sort of had to prove that I was a quote unquote real gamer, and like real gamers play AAA games. But that's what I thought at the time. Very toxic idea. Um, so I had played indie games, probably like flash games are the earliest sort of form of this. None of them really stuck with me. I think my real like indie game awakening happened around the Stardew Valley time. I don't know if it was exactly Stardew, but like obviously Stardew is a huge point for, and it'll probably end up in our game canon, but um it was sort of the first time I had seen an indie game be that widely played. Like I was just showing up to like holiday break and like my cousins were all playing it, and like I was like, "Oh, okay. I get what's happening here." And it is, they are real games, and is something I'm really interested in, and it is this place for creativity. And I was growing up, and like I was now an adult, and I didn't have to prove, because I'd been gaming for like decades at that point. So it was really like the time that allowed me to open up and be like, oh, okay, there's something else here, and it's more uh enriching to me, more engaging to me than a lot of the AAA space. So that's really where I started out in indies, and it's not that long ago. So Uh, as far as what I feel about the indie game canon, like it's such a weird thing because I was going through my lists and sort of thinking, what makes a game canon versus just a really good game that I want to make sure people go and play, like
Yeah.
that's a really, really hard one. I think a lot of it has to do with time. It's served and passed the test of time, where people are still playing it and it's still grabbing people. So games that are bangers that have recently come out are like, do I put this in canon? Because I'm unsure in 10 years if I'm going to still be telling people, oh, this is the game you have to go and play.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's sort of where I stand on idealistically both of those topics.
Mike, how did you end up being the pigeon man?
God damn it.
Serving that pigeon.
Probably getting attacked in Arthur Avenue in the Bronx by a horde of pigeons. Funny enough, Jill mentioning like the old school Flash games like really just sparked something in my brain, maybe a tiny little stroke. But yeah, I guess it really started with like Newgrounds back in the day. Like
Yep.
a
Mhm.
lot of hours poured into Alien Hominid, and even like like they're not, kind of like what Jill was saying, like more, I guess, like if you want to use modern terms, experiences, whatever. But like the amount of times, and like, listen, I was a very different person when I was little. I was a Yonkers kid, super like whatever. Um, there was this drag racing game where you would customize your cars. You put like the underlights on them, the skirts, the biggie, can't you see would constantly play on loop. And we would just drag race for like hours and hours on end. It was the most basic experience, but I guess technically that's like kind of my start in indies back in the day. But I guess like in terms of like what we kind of see as indies like in modern time, like XBLA Arcade was the big thing. So I think of like Super Meat Boy and Splosion Man, Misplosion Man. The big one, the two big ones. I made a game with zombies in it, which was kind of what Vampire Survivors is now. It was an early
Mm.
horde survival kind of game. It recently got ported to Steam, maybe in the past 2 years. It's a very silly horde wave survival kind of thing. If you're into it, like if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely worth picking up. It's a couple bucks. Um, but the big one was Dishwasher, which is I think the first game from Ska Studios, which many folks know from Salt and Sanctuary.
Mhm.
Um, a really like brutal. It was probably like my awakening with like Souls likes, I guess. Like, and I just like didn't really understand it back then. But like really brutal action adventure game, just like die and try again kind of thing, and just get through the level. Super obsessed with Dishwasher in that series. But I would say as an adult, like kind of with Jill, like, more leaning on to the AAA side because, you have to prove that you're a real gamer and yada, yada, yada. When Journey came to PS4, I played it like unspoiled somehow. I played through it, and it just obviously blew me away. I didn't think a game could elicit that kind of emotion before then. And that was kind of when I really started going down the rabbit hole of like, okay, what did I miss on like the PS3 indie library? I used to pick up those like, obviously this was like early PS4, so I think I still had my PS3 at the time, so I started picking up like those indie collections that Sony would put out that
Mhm.
had
Yeah.
there's some with like Journey, and I forgot what else was on there, but dug into those. And then yeah, just obviously once PS4 really started popping off, that's when Contrast, Resogun, that's when you really started to like get into the big old library that we kind of like, that kind of like started this like big old renaissance.
Yeah, it looks like they had a couple different ones. Like I see one that comes up is the Instant Indie Collection, like that had like the Swindler or the Swindle was in
Yeah.
there, and a couple other like Pumped BMX. Yeah, same for like Jill's commentary as well. Like that also awakened like, oh yeah, like what was I playing on the computer? Which I didn't do a lot of computer gaming, like pretty much at all. But QWOP was one of the first indie games I played, which is funny because that's a Benefati game who continues to I think have a big influence and kind of have that cultural touchstone of those types of games even today. But yeah, like playing that, and then I don't think it was also by Benefati, but then I also played Clop, which was like the same idea, but you're a horse. It's like literally the same game, but you're a
That's
horse.
hilarious.
And it, same controls and same concept, which I think most people know what QWOP is, but it's the little like you're the guy running and you like run slowly moving like each part of your muscle groups.
Yeah.
But then, like everybody else, indie games were born in 2012 when Indie Game the movie came out. It's like, okay, that's just like that was the start of indie. No, okay, but that was, I think, for a lot of people, their entry point into indie games in a bigger way, and for me, it certainly was. That's like when I learned what Steam is. Like I wasn't really familiar with that as a place to get games, and then from there, I kind of bought a bunch of Humble Bundles, and I had like a Humble Bundle era where I would just buy a bunch of games and just have that there. But yeah, early ones for me, Super Meat Boy and Binding of Isaac were definitely up there. And Broken Age was also pretty early in my indie experience as well. So those are kind of the things that, I look back on. And when I think of, the indie canon, again, kind of using that literary comparison where it's, things of big influence and also have like kind of a almost denote a point in time is like another aspect of canon. I kind of do think of some of those titles. I think they both had the attention, but also they kind of speak to a certain thing that's kind of capable in the genre. But yeah, Jill, I also struggle with what you mentioned, where there are so many games where I want everybody to play them, but I don't know if they're like what I would make for my like kind of indie canon. So we're gonna get into that next. Jill, what's making your cut for the canon? When you think about legacy, influence, genre, you're handing the aliens come to Earth and they say, "We heard you got the indie games. You're handing what are you handing over
I'm handing over to
in a
them.
box somehow?" Even though most of these indie games are digital because it's hard to get physical pressings. But what are you putting in that
I'm
hypothetical
uploading it
box?
into their brain.
Yeah, you can
It's
take
really
indies in high
funny.
school. What are you playing?
Oh man, Indies 101. Um, it's funny because like looking at the doc, which none of y'all can, but like we all have like this paragraph, and it's gonna be an intense discussion to figure out. I, I put a lot of them that I'm like I'm super into these, and some of them like I don't know if it's just that I'm super into them, or whether or not they should be here. Um, but like Stardew, of course, is going to be on the list. I don't think any of us can argue that it shouldn't be there. Um, as far as like walking sim, the walking sim I think of is What Remains of Edith Finch. I know, Janet, you have a rebuttal to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I love that game. I think it's I think it's the best walking sim that's ever been made,
I
probably.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And yet, I would
And
go Gone
yet,
Home or Firewatch for like the canonical walking sim because I think What Remains is better understood and appreciated if you've played Gone Home or
yeah.
Firewatch. Not that Gone Home and Firewatch were like the first to ever do it either necessarily, but I think those are kind of what put that genre on the map. I think they're also weaker games, but in
Yeah.
part of that is because they are simpler. So
Because
I
they
feel like
walked
they
so
are
that Edith
looking right
Finch could
there.
walk a little bit
A
more.
little bit faster, yeah. So yeah, they walked so Edith Finch could walk briskly. Yeah, I think that's what I would put in there. But if I could force people to play a game, it would be What Remains of Edith Finch. But
Yeah.
I do think Gone Home and Firewatch are like those classic basic bangers of the style.
Yeah, those are definitely games that always get popped up. I think the other um thing that always gets popped up, originally when we started talking about this topic, we were actually talking about games to play in the fall, and there are very specific indie games that always get brought up in that context. And Night in the Woods is 100% one of those
Yeah.
games that you're always sort of like, it's getting, the leaves are changing, it's kind of spooky. This is the game to play. I think Night in the Woods is one of the I think it's hard not to have an indie canon without Night in the Woods, just because it's older. I think there's a place for time and legacy for these games. But also it continues to touch people and relate to what is happening. The basic idea of the game is there is, it's a cat, but it doesn't matter. A May who
Anthropomorphic cat.
anthropomorphic cat, named May, who has for various reasons left college to go back to their hometown, and you have a lot of that feeling of like dealing with failure, dealing with mental health, dealing with returning back to a place and people all knowing who you are, knowing all your business, and like trying to reconnect with friends and try to reconnect with an old life you'd left behind, and it's just it is very human and personal. And then you get a lot of like weird humor, which it never hurts, and you get a lot of odd twists and turns as you go through, so it's still surprising to people who like think, oh, I thought this was going to be this kind of game, and then it's like I wasn't expecting this. um I had a real trouble. Obviously, something Supergiant has to be on the list, but I had real trouble deciding what. I think people would argue, perhaps, that Hades is sort of the pinnacle at the moment of their achievements. But again, with canon, is it the best game, or is it the game that started it all, sparked it all, got people talking, has that legacy to go back to? So like it's kind of hard. So I just put all Supergiant games. Everyone needs to play every single one of them.
Is there one you would pick that isn't Hades that you were like thinking would it just be the first for the sake of
maybe Transistor is my thought.
See, I feel like the streets don't. I feel like I don't hear the streets talking about Transistor the same way.
What is the streets saying?
The streets are saying
the streets
Hades
are saying
over and over in my ear.
Well, aside from Hades, the streets are saying probably Bastion.
The streets do be saying Bastion. The streets are loud about Bastion for sure.
Yeah, I think
sure.
Transistor and the
Transistor
Pyre
maybe just has a redheaded protagonist, so that's
maybe. Yeah, I think Transistor and Pyre get forgotten about a lot. I think Pyre more so over Transistor.
I think Pyre is more controversial. I think there was the kind of sports aspect that people weren't feeling. I don't know, but I see someone typing.
Yeah, it's me.
I'm worried.
Don't worry about it.
I'm worried about what's being typed out.
I'm writing some just because it'll come up.
Okay, you're writing
some
all the
notes. Well, yeah, like I'm trying to think of get a vibe of what's if we had to distill it down, what do we kind of feel might be here, and we'll revisit that once everyone's done sharing and we can kind of edit it because I don't want it to just be purely based on like my thoughts on it. But yeah, what other ones you got on there?
So kind of the ones after this are things that I'm like maybe they should be in the canon, but they're not going to be like these are 100% going on. Except Tunic. I think Tunic should be in canon. But people might argue that Fez
little Zelda fox.
I didn't know you liked that game. Weird.
Yeah, I never mentioned it. Really?
Was that you that played it? Like,
you're fox. I'm Pigeon Boy. You're Fox Lady. I didn't know that.
Fox Lady.
Damn.
Yeah, but that might just be a situation where I love it so much, but I do love it. So perhaps that will stand the test of time. I think Celeste probably goes on the list. I'm actually not a huge fan of Celeste. I don't like precision platformers have historically not been.
I don't like Night in the Woods.
Damn.
So
maybe I need to go back.
I'm kind of with you with Night in the Woods.
Dude, okay,
go back and play. Go back and play.
I haven't played it in a long time. I know Jenny just played it not that long ago for her podcast Geeks and Grounds, which I'm working through those episodes. I didn't like. It felt very Catcher in the Rye to me, and I never was a Catcher in the Rye fan.
Catcher in the Rye, it's
like
not my favorite.
You know what I mean? But continue. We can dog on Night in the Woods any other time.
I think just to say my piece, I love the characters, I love the narrative, all that kind of stuff. I think it just overstays its welcome. I don't think it should have been an 8-hour game.
I would also leave it in the canon though, still as well, because I do think this is one that again the streets are in an uproar about, and I do think it establishes a lot of the tonal and artistic tendencies that we see throughout indie design. Not to boil indies down to a singular thing, because I do think there's that stereotype of like, oh, this little art thing with feelings is the indie. And yes, but also yes and, right? But also yes. So I do think it kind of checks that, sad person hometown is like an indie core concept. And I do think Night in the Woods is one of the classics to do that. But we'll leave Tunic in here and come back to kill him later. But what else you got, Jill?
I think probably in the canon, probably strong contender is Inside. Though some people might go thinking about Limbo.
That. I would do Inside over Limbo. I think
I would do Inside over Limbo.
I think I'd go Limbo. But here's a question about that. Because I love Inside. I think it's like incredible. I do think Limbo has a little bit more of the noise though. Like, is it just me, or I feel like people don't talk about Inside really anymore? I think I love that game.
I think people are afraid to talk about Inside so they don't spoil stuff.
Yeah, probably. I get,
but that's the only thing that gives me pause on Inside a little bit.
Because like I think Inside is a much stronger game. I think it's probably an argument of What Remains versus Gone Home. Of like, there's so much that is inspired by Limbo.
Yeah. I mean, even Inside is in a way inspired by Limbo, right? It's like, I do think when you playing Limbo and then playing Inside, Limbo feels like you're playing the bones of Inside. Yeah. But like, you get the meat on the bones for Inside. So it's like, oh, like, and the meat's delicious. So it's just like,
so meaty.
I don't know. But that's the only one that I was thinking, especially of the modern ones. I'm like, I don't know if I put that in there, but like it's the better game and it's really, really incredible. Right. But it's also weird because I feel like I feel like Inside and Limbo is like a thought that started that I feel like people didn't run with as much in some ways. Or do y'all feel like you're seeing a lot of games pull from I feel like doesn't feel as foundational in a way, even though they are iconic. Thoughts?
I think other folks have tried it but haven't succeeded yet.
Yeah.
Somerville
If you look
is an example of
yeah,
that.
I wonder, maybe
Little Nightmares I think is the
I was about to
exception.
mention Little Nightmares, even though I think they maybe have grown past indie at this point. I don't remember if they're owned now.
Well,
by
so
Bandai Namco.
So
and then they split off.
Yeah, Little Nightmares
into 2
3
parts.
is being, I think that's the Until Dawn devs doing it now, but the Little Nightmares devs, they are making their
Reanimal.
And they were
which
both
is
in
just
the same showcase at the same time,
and one looks a lot better than the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because we keep end up inadvertently brainstorming on the episodes, but I think there's something. I don't know if we have enough information there yet to have like a bigger conversation, but it's been interesting seeing these studios. Like back in the day, we saw a lot of I left AAA and I'm making my indie studio, and you still see that now. But I feel like now we're also seeing I left the indie studio and now I'm making another indie studio, and I think that's been a really fascinating split as well that we're kind of seeing happen.
It gets really messy too, like the whole Zaum intricacy of like all of the legal stuff that's going on, and then every single member. Disco Elysium also should probably be on this list, but we'll talk about that later.
Oh yeah.
Like splitting out and like every single different developer making a new quote unquote spiritual successor to Disco Elysium. That would be an interesting episode digging into that, I think. But also back to Inside and Limbo. Cocoon is something I thought of as like, does this deserve to be in the canon? But I haven't even put it on my list because it's so new. And I'm like, is it going to be a game in 5 years that I go back and say, yeah, Cocoon's the puzzle game you want to play, or is it going to be like Lorelei? But again, that's so new that I can't be 100% like, what is the it puzzle game?
As much as the man is a scumbag, but Witness.
Yeah, it is.
I've avoided the scumbag creators because I don't want to like.
Me neither. I just want to throw that out there, but
But
I would say I think Cocoon.
Throw Minecraft in there too.
I think Cocoon does have the staying power. I think like Cocoon compared to Lorelei, I think is a very interesting conversation because like Lorelei, fantastic. It does so much right, but I think Cocoon is designed in a way that guides the player without holding hands, and I think that is just such a groundbreaking I don't know, groundbreaking spin on like actual game design, whereas Lorelei can be a little like we joke about it a little like half jokingly say like me and Janet may be too stupid for Lorelei.
Yeah.
Whereas Cocoon,
that's what I've been playing actually.
Whereas Cocoon,
also,
like
I can never spell Lorelei.
Dude, same.
Where's the A? Where's the E?
I want to point out. I won't.
Anyway, just to close that out, I think Cocoon like is a pristine example of like game design. I think like down the line in game design classes, like that is the game like that professors will start teaching, because I think just like the pacing and the structure of that game is like goddamn brilliant, and the concept of like everything you need to solve a puzzle is on the screen at all times is brilliant.
Yeah. I went to a school that has a video game degree, not when I was going there. But and sometimes I look at the classes, I'm like, oh, I want to go back. I want to just be there in the room and see what they're saying. Maybe we could ask them. But yeah, I think the other ones that I are kind of floating around in my head. I've got Gree, Inscription, Doki Doki, Citizen Sleeper, Dead Cells, Immortality, Undertale, and Oxenfree are sort of the ones that I'm like, I think probably Immortality, but again, Telling Lies or Her Story.
Might be... that's the thing. That's the thing. I would personally go Her Story because it's just older, I guess.
It's like the legacy. It's hard to balance the legacy with like, I think Immortality is obviously like the more recent game. So
I think it's the what
remains
bias. it's like the what remains-ness, because I actually still haven't gotten to Immortality, but everyone says it's
so
like
good.
really brilliant. But I also think what I think hits so hard for her story is the vibe of it being infused with Emily is Away meets Night Trap almost in it. So I think there's something about its construction that also just feels very classically designed. Like it feels like it is an older game than Immortality, but it also feels old to play.
Right.
In a good way. Like it's a great game,
like the
but it just
instant
like
classic sort of feel.
Yeah, it's got that crunch to it. Yeah,
I imagined you
go Horror
literally
Story.
eating Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, you know, something to
That crunch.
I would never, because God, I hate Catcher in the Rye, but
I hate it so much. I'm
oh,
sorry.
I forgot if
everyone who
I know
likes
you shout out Oxenfree. Did you mention Undertale on here?
I did.
Okay. Yeah, Undertale is also on my list. Oxenfree is interesting. I do feel like people do talk about that one a lot. I love that game. I don't know if it's on. Mike, do you have a... Actually, I forgot. What's your Oxenfree history? I know you weren't into the second one, so you must have played the first then.
I adore the first one. I think the first one's brilliant, and yeah, the second one disappointed me.
Is this in your canon, do you think? Or
Yeah,
what's your feeling on?
I think so. I think it's a really great really great narrative.
Walk and talk.
Walk and talk, timey-wimey adventure. Like it definitely harkens back to the glory days of like, you know, the LucasArts adventure games, but is a modern spin on it. I think what always draws me to Oxenfree are the characters, the vibe, and like the visual language of that game, but like the soundtrack and Scientific's score and soundscape is just totally ingrained into my psyche. And yeah, I think that's totally worth having in the canon.
Yeah. I also want to shout out A Short Hike. I don't know if I did or not, or if I glanced over that, but
I think that one you missed.
Yeah, I don't. Again, it's one of those ones I'm not 100% sure, but it's like if you've heard of indies, people have talked about A Short Hike. It is one of those games where it's like, of course, A Short Hike. It's interesting because A Short Hike, like commercially, did not do very well, but I've never been in a conversation talking about like indies you need to play where that hasn't come up on the list, and it does branch out into like exploration is what Janet has just written, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of the exploration. Like you don't, I think without A Short Hike you don't get like Toem, you don't get like
Little Gator
Game. Like there are
There's
definitely
a couple other ones too that
yeah, it's definitely others.
Yeah,
it kind of
I
was just like
no,
quick,
ahead,
it kind of spun off into like a casual exploration game, like nothing that had too much weight to it versus like, you know, this is a extreme comparison, but like something like a Breath of the Wild where like there was like the two Zelda games are so overwhelming and so overbearing, whereas A Short Hike you could 100% and see everything in that game in like a few hours, and you still feel that sense of accomplishment, and every little discovery is super rewarding, even if it is something like a little mini game about riding jet skis, or of course like the ultimate ending of the game of like how that game wraps up. Yeah, I think Short Hike definitely is like a quintessential indie must.
I think too, I'm trying to get my dates correct. Okay, so A Short Hike did come out after Celeste, even though they probably were developed around the same time because overlap. But I think also like A Short Hike is very evocative of the ultimate ending, or like a very like grandiose climb, which is not new to A Short Hike because Celeste is also a climbing game where it's like, it has like a big end like that.
Toem, arguably.
Yeah. But I think it kind of really put that on the map in a different kind of way. It's just really well made, because I'm trying to think of the other of games like A Short Hike that have come out before A Short Hike, and I'm sure there are some, but I do think that game put that style on the map. And yeah, it is weird because it's like everyone and no one played at the same time. Like I don't understand, but yeah, it is like it's honestly one of the most iconic games on this list that we've kind of started to work through. And it's just so pleasant. I love A Short Hike. I know it's not games we love, but it's just like,
right?
Yeah,
like it's really hard when you love some of these games. You're like, you really should play this. But
I do think A Short Hike speaks to something kind of more general. Mike, I want to go to you with some of your list because you definitely had some ones on here that caught my eye for sure. So what do you got?
Yeah, so a lot of crossover, obviously, but I think some that we didn't bring up yet. I think Coffee Talk is like
Oh yeah,
essential
yeah.
for narrative and like, if you want to call it like the visual novel, whatever. But like what that game does with narrative and characters is brilliant. And of course, Fami, the late great Fami, one of the greatest storytellers of our time. We talked about Inscription. We
How do
talked
you
about
feel?
yeah.
Speaking of visual novel, how would you feel Coffee Talk versus Doki Doki?
Um, I so personally, I have never played through Doki Doki
Oh
start
my
to
gosh,
finish because it's been
you
spoiled.
need
It's
Same.
been
to.
spoiled for me. So like
It hasn't been
I know
spoiled
the
for me
thing.
yet. I still haven't played it.
Okay, well
Okay.
you
I don't
need to
know
play the
anything.
heck out of this game. You need to play
I
the heck out of this game.
I prefer Coffee Talk start like from what I've played of Doki Doki versus Coffee Talk. I prefer something like a Coffee Talk it is just really endearing characters and like what you could do with character progression and character growth with the simple setting of you play as a barista serving coffee and just listening to conversations. It's such a simple concept, but it's a concept that is so human. And I think that's
Mhm.
what makes not only Coffee Talk, but like a lot of Fami's games just so brilliant. I think we're gonna get to experience. Thankfully, we're gonna get to experience that one more time with Afterlove EP tentatively next year. But yeah, that's kind of where I land there. We talked about a lot of these other ones. I do want to mention. I think Hotline Miami is
Yeah. Mhm.
on that list as like just a groundbreaking, just fucking die and try again action game. Definitely like the birth of like what Devolver is nowadays. I wrote the Emily is Away games on here, but I
Mhm.
kind of take that back a little. I love the Emily is Away games because those games emotionally devastated me. But
Yeah.
I will already counteract myself and put Before Your Eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mm.
And Before Your Eyes, again, a game that did something really innovative in its controller input mechanics, which you can obviously turn off if you want, but playing it in the way that is, I guess, intended, it just triggers such a strong emotional response. And obviously that ties into the themes of like life flashing before your eyes or like life going away in the blink of an eye. Really incredible.
I think
Um,
it also has the added benefit of having a mechanic that I've never seen before,
mhm.
which is like in its broadest aspect, something that indies play around with, having a totally creative approach to delivering a story,
Yeah.
which
Which
should
all made us
net
all
its
play
importance.
like this.
Like,
For audio listeners, I held open my eyes. Um, and a very specific one for me, and like I don't know if y'all have played it. I adore Umurangi Generation. I think it is so overlooked in the scene. It is one of the most punk rock games out there, and it's such like a brilliant commentary on just like capitalism and bullshit wars. And it's the game rocks so hard. But I know that's just like very much just a me thing.
right. That's
Um,
the difficult thing where you have these like, I love this game so much,
Yeah,
I want it
exactly.
to be canon. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's how I feel about Before Your Eyes a bit. Like I feel like I don't know if I would put that in only because I don't know where we go. Like I feel like it was such a one and done influence. Still like a fantastic game. Like if I had to make like a thing, a start like Blue Sky has those starter packs. An indie starter pack I would definitely put Before Your Eyes in. A question I have for you, Mike,
Mhm.
or really anyone that can answer is for something like Coffee Talk, and I have the same question for a couple other titles. Even if you don't put it up for like, I want this for canon consideration, is there any other older game or other game that you feel like is similarly in that conversation? Kind of, is there an inside to Coffee Talks limbo in a sense? Because I think of like Valhalla bartender or whatever,
Sure,
but does that end up
Valhalla.
going off into more of a different? Because I know like Coffee Talk is more pure in its construction. Like I'm not sure if Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender veers maybe in a way that you feel like Coffee Talk is the true essence, even though it wasn't,
Yeah, I kind of
the oldest thought.
it's been forever since I've touched Valhalla, but like I consider those
Same.
two different kind of categories. Like they're similar genre, similar gameplay, but like doing two somewhat different things in terms of like the story they're trying to tell and the characters they're trying to portray. Like Coffee Talk, if folks haven't played it, Coffee Talk without spoilers, takes place in a fantastical Seattle. Like there's orcs and elves and stuff like that. But it is such an endearing human story, and it pulls on like real world situations that were some of them unfortunately are still current, but like that were very current at the time. And I think I don't really remember Valhalla doing that. I think Valhalla, and nothing wrong with that, but Valhalla definitely like kind of like wrote to its own accord, and tried to just tell its own story, which obviously fantastic. But yeah, I think Coffee Talk, just the way it kind of adapts real world situations, is kind of groundbreaking.
And then same question for Omorangi Generation, because that one I'm not as familiar with. I don't know if there's other ones that you thought were kind of competing with it, or if you feel like it is like the one to point to.
In my opinion, I think it's the one. I think it's just so raw and so imperfect in a way. I think that just only elevates like the narrative it's trying to tell, and it's something that does, like, the narrative isn't really like the focus on the game. It's, for folks who aren't familiar with it, it's essentially Tony Hawk but taking photos, but it's like kind of the world that is going on around you, and like the conflicts that's going on around you. Like, you don't explicitly interact with anything with that, but like it just creates such a awe-striking world that is like horrifying and, I guess, hopeful, just with how, I guess, if you want to call it, the quote unquote good guys of the stories are portrayed level by level. But yeah, it's just so raw and authentic and grounded, and again, just punk is all hell, and something I kind of, when I'm in the mindset of just like indie games are punk and raw and like imperfect. I think that kind of captures like the spirit of what indies are.
Yeah. I mean, I was so tempted, something in there.
I was so tempted to say Pokemon Snap.
Yeah.
I have a weird.
That's what your head's at.
I have a weird question.
Now I'm thinking of Penco Park. Penco Park.
Penco Park. Yeah. Penco Park.
I don't know. The park with the lads.
The park with the lads.
Little lads of the year.
The strange lads.
Can't wait. Yeah. Weird question, because I saw that another entry in this series just dropped today out of nowhere. I don't know if it was announced. Is backyard baseball an indie? Because I think that's our sports game.
Isn't it indie? I never actually is it?
I don't know. I mean, like, I guess technically modern backyard baseball is, because Mega Cat Studios is putting it out, but like back in the day, I don't know.
I guess we don't have a sport. BC ball will be eventually in the
BC ball could be our
once BC ball comes in.
I'm sure there are sports games. We just don't tend to explore them.
Pyre.
Wasn't there like what was that weirdo game everyone got into that had to do with baseball? Wasn't that an indie?
Blaseball.
Yeah.
Oh, Blaseball.
What's the story there?
Blaseball is so fucking good. Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't know what Blaseball is.
I feel like it was.
I've been scared to ask.
It was less perhaps a sports game and more a.
It was like role playing, right? It was more.
It was like a massive ongoing D&D campaign, which had the structure of a sporting event. Oh my gosh.
Not literally, but kind of tangential to this canon topic. We should throw in an indie that's only an indie on technicality, but is massive. So like Baldur's Gate 3. Right. Like the big to represent the most expensive indie that you can make.
I did a quick
elaborate, I guess.
A very quick Google, and like there's some obvious like indie sports games. Like, I mean, granted, it's now not an indie, but like it was. Rocket League is on that list.
Oh yeah,
right.
Golf Story made goddamn waves. I personally adore Ollie Ollie. I think that first game rocks.
Oh yeah, of course, Ollie Ollie.
Those are probably like the three standouts. Like, obviously, Rocket League is not indie anymore, but it started indie, and even when it started, shit rocked.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe that.
But is it like?
Put a question mark
there? Is it something
there.
you would put in the canon? Is it something you would make high schoolers sit down and play to understand?
Try to stop them from playing. You know. It's weird because I feel like those are obviously like huge, but I think. Almost similar to Minecraft, it's like it is a big thing that has happened at the end. Like I feel like it didn't. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I feel like I'm not. I don't want to say like the waves of that aren't felt, because they are, but I don't know. I don't know if I'd more readily put Minecraft than like Rocket League. I think just because I think Rocket League. I think we have struggled in the indie space to really have like a good sports lane, you know, even just based on this conversation, right? I think it's taken a while to like kind of conjure that up. I don't think if that game exists, I don't think we've gotten it yet fully. Even though Rocket League is like obviously a very successful, very beloved title. But I don't know, do y'all feel differently about it?
No, I'm kind of with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like something about it just I don't know.
Yeah. I think in that same breath, it's worth mentioning Fall Guys also. Again, not indie anymore, but as a multiplayer experience, I think it's pretty
or even just
fantastic.
like it's tough because it's like
Among Us, yeah.
These are like I do think Among Us, maybe more than Fall Guys in a way, like had, put deception on the map in a way that I think
put deception
definitely
on
is
the map.
But I also think that might be maybe it's not quite canon though. Maybe that's more of a influential, which it's related to canon because canon is also influence. But I almost like how I forgot if there was a game before Lethal Company, but like how there's like a lot of Lethal Company likes at this point. But I wouldn't say it's quite there yet. I guess more, I'd say Fall Guys and Among Us are definitely the ones to watch, where I could see in a few years us being like, what's like one of the core pillars of these conversations, Among Us and Fall Guys. Maybe part of it is they've gotten so popular they don't get as brought up in the same way.
I think Among Us should definitely be in consideration for like the co-op experience. Because
it's
really
like a co-op
did spark,
party game kind of situation.
Yeah, it really did spark that explosion of genre recently.
Yeah,
and allowed other things to exist. So I think that is enough to make it canon worthy.
I think also it is in that another check that I personally do when I think of, canon stuff is, are people almost like, what? You've never played it? That's crazy. And I think Among Us is one of those where it's like, all right, pick up your sticks and rock Among Us at least once just to see, what's there.
Can I go recency bias here? Because we're trying to avoid new games, but I think there is one that probably belongs on the list. Balatro.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, I've never heard anyone say it that way. Balatro.
Balatro, whatever.
Bialatro. Anyway, yeah, I think that's also. I think we can kind of circle back to that with because I want to semi-solidify the list, even though Jenny's not here. But I think we all speak for Jenny whenever she's not here, so I think we're kind of good.
Sorry, Jenny.
But I think
Jenny's gonna come back and be like, "How did you not put this and this on the list?"
I know 1,000. Or well, honestly, okay. Well, we'll just get into it now because we're already in there. Again, not speaking for Jenny, but I did think about her with Slay the Princess and thinking of like, because Doki Doki has like a weird, like a dark twist to it, right? Is that its thing? It's like, oh, it's this, and then it's like some type of
I think that Slay the Princess is much more
sicko shit
up. To it is much more transparent about what it is going to be about.
But I do think
Doki
there's
Doki
something
is stark when it changes.
There's something in I think Inscription is kind of similar where like you started off kind of scared, so it's like, hey, who knows what's gonna happen here? But I think there's definitely some type of thread of the surprisingly twisty as like an indie kind of classic.
Like here's the thing. I think that the game that we can trace this back to is a game made by someone I don't want to celebrate and therefore don't want to put it on the list. But I will mention it because I know people out there will want it. But I think Braid is probably the
Scumbag.
Game.
Yeah.
See, I feel like here's the thing. Here's the thing about Braid.
It's fine.
I think it's fine. Like even like again, I think if we're gonna
Soulja Boy's favorite game.
Hype. Yeah, exactly. I never got the Braid hype, and I wouldn't really, even if Jonathan Blow was a good person, I wouldn't personally put it up there, even though it is like old and kind of in that the documentary vibe. But
that's the kind of question we're having here between a lot of these games of like, these games did it better because they iterated better on the thing that was foundational, and this was the first game that was like, oh my gosh, it's a twist at the end that no one saw coming. That's a little disturbing. So like, that's why I bring it up.
What the twist is, but don't tell me because I don't want people who are still working through Braid like 20 years later. It's not that old, but
Yeah. So, but I don't want it on my list.
Yeah, no. And besides, I think Inscription does the twist stuff, I think, above anyone else. Without spoiling shit, like
Doki.
I mean, Inscription tying to real world history stuff is fucking bonkers.
It's really funny.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll circle back to that to solidify things.
Also, another one that popped into
toxic
mind,
aside.
is speaking about Scumbag, but like in that era, it came out. Castle Crashers, I think, also is like a
Yeah, like it's for. I feel like
like
it's
in the
more of a
co-op vein.
classic than a
Than a
canon, but I
staple,
do
sure.
think, yeah, though I did hit Castle Crashers pretty hard. It's a, you know, this would might not be worth doing an episode of, but it's kind of insane. It's not insane because it, people are people, and turns out some people aren't great. But the amount of like toxicity that has come from the indie space is actually like kind of
Yeah.
wild, but not really. Again, they're all people, so it's like it's not actually that shocking. But at the same time, I'm like, it's weird that we keep having these auteurs that are like awful.
These are bad people. I think a lot of it has to do with the indie space is so much less regulated than a lot of the AAA space. Because when you're in a AAA space, you typically have a full company structure that usually comes with PR. And a lot of the times PR fails. We've seen that happen spectacularly in the PR space or in the AAA space or HR. But I think for a lot of indie studios, you are a singular person and everything goes through you. And if that singular person happens to be a horrific person, then horrific things happen. And that's unfortunate. And we don't want to gloss over the fact that that is 100% true. And it continues to be true. It's not just like, oh, these old, like, back in the day situations. Like, we have ongoing things that, like, again, Night in the Woods is under this umbrella as well. That's a whole saga, which is sad
who
and
made Night in the Woods
horrifying.
again?
But
I don't remember who. What's the studio
you go ahead and look that up. I don't want to get into that.
What's the studio name? Is it like a studio thing or a person thing? I know you said you didn't want to get into
thing.
it, but you put me in the chair, so I get to.
You go ahead and Google and get into that if you want.
Yeah.
But that person has passed away, so that game no longer supports that person. So I don't mind having Night in the Woods being celebrated here, but for some other
I'm ready to dog Night in the Woods whenever we're ready. I've been ready since it came out. I think we'll have a toxic aside at the end of the like, what this is our Devolver Digital pile of unfortunate circumstances. But okay, cool.
I actually also want to talk about a game that we've all said kind of belongs here, but also really kind of doesn't belong here. It's kind of like a weird 50-50, and that's Journey.
Sonic Generator.
Yeah, I have Journey on my list, actually. I think it's the ones on my list that we haven't mentioned at all yet are Journey.
No, but Journey doesn't belong here.
Doesn't? Really?
Does not. Because
why is that?
Was when it was originally released, it was published by Sony.
Yeah.
So
small team, big publisher.
Yeah.
Is it technically an indie?
What is it?
But like
game?
Later,
you know what? I'm not gonna fight for Journey because I never really liked Rock to the Journey like that. So I guess if y'all want to leave it out for
later editions in different spaces do get published by other people. So I think it's okay to put it in the indie category. I just want to point out that it is one of those things that's like so quintessential indie and probably should be in canon, but also is
it's a Sony Santa Monica
as whether or not it is actually an indie game, because it was released for Windows and iOS under Annapurna.
Yeah.
So like it does later become sort of indie, which is weird, but
Journey Lad and Kratos share the same grandparents, so.
My only other one that I had on here was Papers, Please. Yes. And like I was thinking maybe Hollow Knight, even though I'm not a Hollow Knight person, but I feel like
I don't rock with Hollow Knight.
I'm not. Bugs kind of freak me out.
Are we just let's just delete Hollow Knight off here?
I went back to Hollow Knight recently, and I was like, man, this doesn't feel good to play.
Wow! Everyone come at Mike.
Throw it out there. Listen, I respect the hell out of it, but man, I
think just because it has sparked such interest, I don't know if that's the memification of it though. Because Silksong, of course, everybody's waiting for it. It's coming. Don't worry. But
yeah, no, that's wild.
I can't wait for it to come out so everybody could get out of the 6-1 Indie Showcases comments.
Yeah. We need to stop commenting it. It's not funny anymore. It's not cute. One indie game. Congratulations. Like,
okay, I think if maybe it's something we'll revisit and do like a part 2 at some point. We can get Jenny's stuff. We can.
Oh yeah, we
can
do
kind
definitely a
of
follow-up.
solidify it. So consider this for draft 1, right?
Draft
it's not
1.
perfect, but I'm just going to read off what we have for our draft 1 of building the indie canon. We got Stardew Valley representing the farming sims. We know for sure we want a walking sim.
I think it's
Not
Edith Finch,
100%
man.
sure.
I think 100%
which one.
sure. I want
What
to say
remains
Gone
of Edith
Home.
Finch is maybe leading. Gone Home, a potential contender. We'll revisit that. We got Night in the Woods as an adventure game with
also,
feelings.
like, since we're calling out folks, like Gone Home's director also ain't the best dude in the world.
Yeah.
When we make this for real,
So
we'll add
I'm
like
going
a
Edith
back
Finch, then.
end
No one can
that's
stop me.
like, I see. Okay, well, again, it's a whole, it's a whole
Okay,
thing.
no,
But
go
yes,
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Potentially Bastion, maybe Hades. Tunic also a contender. We got Inside and Limbo kind of competing with each other. We got some other games that won't be named. We got Gree, because we want some kind of game that represents maybe that art, feeling
High
vibe
art.
first kind of game.
Yeah.
Inscription as a potential, representing card games, games within games, twists in games. Her Story, Undertale. Oxenfree representing the timey-wimeys. A Short Hike representing casual exploration games. Coffee Talk holding down visual novels. Doki Doki also as a possible visual novel or dark twist thing. Hotline Miami for the action. Before Your Eyes as a potential for innovation within storytelling. Maybe something with like an Emily is Away. We got a Morangi Generation representing kind of the punkness of indies. Among Us representing the co-op party game structure. Balatro is just like a good ass card game. TBD. Boise Pass. We don't know. And maybe Papers, Please, just because there's been like a million Papers, Please likes. But that is our first draft. Let us know in the comments and on socials what you think belongs in the indie canon. We will definitely be revisiting this topic at some point with Jenny's ideas and hopefully making our full canon featuring the attic of canceled creators that will kind of judge or do out back. But Mike, you had something to say before we got into what we've been playing?
Well, I was gonna say, if I may segue us into what we've been playing, I'm excited to put Grun on this list eventually, because man, Grun rocks.
Oh my gosh. I'm excited.
Oh my goodness gracious, this game.
The fun with Grun. Have you finished it?
Fun with Grun. I have finished 7 endings. I am aware of the other endings, but I have not done them. The good ending, the ending,
quote unquote.
No spoilers. I think we should do a spoiler cast at some point. Maybe after.
I 100% agree with
fun.
that. This is a game, and it's not on my list because I haven't played it recently, but I did review it, so go check that out. And I called it out as one of the best of the year. And these two sitting right here were just like,
I was all in, man. I just didn't have time or money to play.
Didn't have time and money, but now they Janet started with just like a screenshot of her starting this game, and then Mike jumped on this weekend, and I'm so excited to hear what y'all think.
Yeah, I love this game. Mike, I think, is it accurate? I call this a dumb friendly puzzle game. Do you feel?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Grun. 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. The Dutch, they love the dumbs. Dutch, right?
Yeah,
it's a Dutch
finally.
game.
Yeah.
It's based on the Dutch garden, his father's Dutch garden.
Yeah, God bless the Dutch.
This is, I think it's also, obviously half joking, not joking about, me.
Can we make one of our awards 2 thumbs up?
Yes.
Thank
Why
you.
not?
Putting a note.
Why not? Yeah, but genuinely, I also think, Mike, I'm starting to think that maybe it's not just that we're dumb. I think we are dumb at hyper logic stuff. Because I think we can. I think you give us some environments and minimal reading, we can go. We can go because I felt really capable in this game. I talked about it I think a bit last week even because I had started it, but yeah, finished it off. It's awesome. I didn't do everything in the game. I did all the Polaroid. I solved all the Polaroids, and I got all the endings. But honestly, I'm waiting for maybe when this game comes to like consoles, like PlayStation, so I can get like the platinum or something, because there's still like more stuff to do. And like I was watching Isaiah play through it, and like I saw some stuff already where I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. So I just think there's so much room for like more exploration without needing you to get the more. That's the key point. I don't need to have gotten more, but there's more for me there, which I think is really exciting. But Mike, what was your experience jumping into Grun?
Yeah, so
before you start, can you explain what Grun is?
Grun is a totally normal gardening game.
Totally normal.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, so over this past weekend, primarily Kyle and myself did our annual Extra Life stream. We're starting to frame Extra Life to just do. We're streaming all like the Indie Game Award nominees. So Sunday, I think it was Sunday afternoon, we popped on Grunt. We didn't really have much context going into it aside from it being a totally normal gardening game. And man, those 4 hours are probably the best 4 hours I've had this year playing a video game. Secretly, I think this is like the best co-op game of the year because just the experience of sitting with a friend and just like the light bulb moments and like smacking each other on the couch of like, oh my god, the worm with the fisherman. Well, if we give it to the fisherman, like
yeah, exactly.
There were so many eureka moments, but like not all of them like were the actual eureka moments. That they were like much more simpler than what we were trying to like. Again, it's a very two thumbs up kind of game. Yeah, just it's hard to really thoroughly talk about it without spoilers, but I think Jill, you were right that the gameplay design of this video game is immaculate in terms of it's like a breadcrumb kind of game, you know, where you get your little pieces. You feel a little, I think when I first started like my first cycle, we'll call it, a little lost, didn't really know what I was doing. Yeah, I was just gardening, doing my thing. Eventually, like I think the easiest first ending is just like, without spoiling anything, it becomes nighttime. And then all of a sudden you start getting into the rhythm of like, oh well, I know where this thing is, I know where that little shortcut is, I know where this tool may be, I know how to not rely on this tool, and just getting into a cycle of like understanding the world, understanding the rules, understanding the mechanics, understanding the placement of certain things, and just really getting into I don't know, I guess this like flow state of like really making the world your own because of all the systems and mechanics in place. And once you nail a cycle, especially like when you're going for that good ending, once you nail that shit, it is so satisfying and it pays off. Like it's not like a game that where you get the quote unquote good ending and it's just kind of like whatever. The good ending is very cool. Like it's such like a absurd premise and an absurd game, and yeah, like the payoff in terms of like a narrative, like quote unquote narrative. You don't really play the game for the narrative, but the payoff in terms of like what is going on in the world, and the payoff of just like that sense of achievement that you did a quote unquote clean cycle of this game and you like really hit all the notes perfectly and you like nailed things before like the sun even goes down. It's what a goddamn video game, man. Again, it's hard to talk about without spoiling things, but
yeah, I think it's also one of the games that if you are standing at the end and looking back at where you started, is the most like largest, vastest distance of like, how did I even get here? And it's amazing that this is how it's ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so mad, again, without spoiling things and trying my best to not get into it. And hopefully you guys understand this. To get the ending, you have to collect things. So we naturally collected 4 of the 5 things, and we passed by the 5th thing that was maybe in some sort of maze, let's say. I think because we didn't properly read, we didn't understand how to get the 5th thing, and we just burnt a cycle. And like that was the one like walkthrough thing we looked at, and Kyle looked up on his phone and he's like, we're fucking idiots and you're about to be so mad. And like we did the thing to get the thing, and I was so mad. But in our minds we're like, fuck that, we got it, we just didn't read, it's fine. We did that without a walkthrough.
I was concerned. I'm in the middle of your playthrough right now, and I'm like, I'm really concerned that y'all are not paying attention to that very important thing that was said.
It was a stupid thing. I think we were so focused, I'm gonna keep it top level, we were so focused on the fountain that we didn't pay attention to what mattered.
Yeah. So yeah, go play Grun, everybody. Go play Grun. It's a great game.
The only thing that I didn't like about Grun was that it relies heavily on memorization. Like there's not a lot in the way of reminding you like how you got, or like markings for, you know, one thing you can get in the game is coins, which you can eventually use to like buy things. And some things you like maybe need to buy, some things you don't, like whatever, right? It's like your money. And I'm like, where are these coins at? And having to read, like at a certain point I did end up just taking a lot of notes. So I think if you're someone who doesn't feel confident in their memorization, I think you need to take notes for sure. But I had a good time doing that. Like I didn't feel like that ruined my experience, but admittedly I don't need, it ruined it. I don't need to, I just be like, oh man, I love to crack open the notebook. I'm like, I like my notebook. I don't really like it for games as much. So I do wish there was an infrastructure like baked into Grun to facilitate that. But other than that aspect, I was good with it.
I think the Polaroids tried to do that, but I do understand with like the coins and stuff. I do understand.
Yeah, because and even some of the if you sit down for a while, like if you leave for a while and coming back, I'm like,
this is like this is a single sitting game. You cannot leave and come back.
Walk away from this.
No way. There was a moment during the stream where like we were both having that moment of like, okay, how do you get to the park and trigger this thing and blah 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 blah. And I had this like. I think it comes off as a bit on camera, but like I had this real sincere moment of just screaming because my brain was just overloading, but it was like in the best way possible. Like it felt like it just, I think like it was sincerely like probably the best gameplay experience I had this year. And like when we reflect on this past year and whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being my game of the year because I have not stopped thinking about it for the past
It's
2
really
days.
fun. This is also a lot of people make comparisons to just structurally, not necessarily the quality of it, but to Outer Wilds. And I think this is like if you couldn't follow Outer Wilds, this is the game for you because it is much. This is the Duck Detective to Golden Idol Grun to Outer Wilds. Like, this is the like Outer Wilds Junior. It's not necessarily going to have the big brain blast and the bespoke like exploration of humanity, whatever. But you'll get to see some funny stuff happen and be intrigued and follow a through line because it has like a smaller scale, less complexity. Yeah, it's been awesome. But we only have about 5 minutes or so left before we have some hard outs here. So what other things do people want to shout out?
I could do a quick lightning.
I can go really. Oh, go ahead.
I would just say Arco finally booted that up. The gameplay rocks. I think their combat system is so intelligent and really, really engaging. Go play Arco. Beastie Ball, I played a few minutes so far. It's Pokemon and it does it great. I'm still like I'm struggling with like some of the combat mechanics in terms of like moving and
very complicated.
Yeah, like I'm not fully comprehending, but so far I really love it. I think it's beautiful. It's such a love letter to the Pokemon series, like in terms of narrative and characters.
Absolutely.
Really dig it so far. That's all I got.
It's a love letter and a kind of critique at the same time, which is always perfect.
Yeah.
It's hate mail. You get to benefit from it.
I love this. Let's make that a thing. I want to shout out very quickly Spray Paint Simulator. I just played it on stream. You can go check that out. So very much Power Wash Simulator meets kind of House Flipper. Both things I enjoy quite a bit. I absolutely want to point people to 30 Birds. It is kind of Persian
Do I need to play 29 Birds first? No.
Do I need to play Meta 1, 2, and 3 before Meta 4?
Yeah.
It's got such a cool, refreshing mix of like, first of all, the art style, amazing. It's an adventure game where you find the thing that goes to the thing that, so you'll understand the structure, but the packaging of it is such a cool art style. The art style is freaking amazing. It continues to be amazing. It is both futuristic and very, very looking to the past, and they meld those conditions fantastically. I think I also want to shout out Critter Cafe, which just came out this week. It is kind of collecting little creatures and setting up your cafe. Very cozy. I don't think it's going to be anything that anybody puts on their end of the year list, but it is a nice game to jump into and just be in the world for a little bit and like, what curtains do I want? What book do I want near this cafe? I made a flower out of little like cat beds. And that's the kind of game it's going to be. Nice. I also, for Jenny, I wanted you to know I started 1,000 Times Resist.
Nice.
I'm trying to reserve what I think of it until the end. So we'll find out there, but I think that's all. That's what's on my list.
Yes, this is your reminder that 1,000 Times Resist is due next week. So everyone on Earth, if you're hearing this, you are now cursed with having to play this game. No, I hear it's the episode 1. I enjoyed it a lot. Chapter 1. I just have not gotten back to it, but I will. Is the only thing I know I will do. When will it get done?
Jenny.
We don't know, but I know it will be done. So that's exciting.
I mean, for people in this call, for a very specific reason, it's due by the end of the weekend.
The Indie Informer is done.
6 Windy's also done.
So,
Janet.
I have to get around to it. Yeah, don't worry. I got it. Don't worry about
I
it.
know.
Don't worry about it. It's all part of the process. Do not.
I never criticize the
worry
process.
about it.
I will say also, the Steam sale is going on while we're having this lovely conversation. I've been adding things to my cart. Of course, I have to whittle things down.
No, you're gonna have problems.
Fallen Aces, 30 Birds, Backyard Baseball, Arrow GPX, Haunty, because I only played it on console a little bit, I Am Your Beast, and Dungeon Crawler. That's the current list.
I'm enjoying Haunty a lot. I really want to go back to finish that. I have to check out Dungeon Crawler. That thing's so hard to say, and Googling it also a rough time. So shout out to try to get that game out there. Maybe we'll have more to say on those titles in upcoming weeks. But for now, that's the end of this week's Council. Thank you to everyone for joining us. A reminder that we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and the Indie Council has its own socials. We're on the platform that shall not be named under Indie Council _, but also theindiecouncil.com on Blue Sky. So hit that up. Shout out to domains, because I made Isaiah set that up and rig that over. So we have that. This session is closed. Go play 1,000 Times Resist and some indies.